Why you're wrong about Israel Adesanya. Typically, the saying, everyone wants you on top until you're there, has always been applicable in the world of sport, where many times athletes who were once idolized find themselves in a position where they start to suffer from their own success. This has always been the case for UFC fighters, particularly our champions. John Jones, Luke Rockhold, and to a degree Conor McGregor all come to mind in this category. However, today, I want to talk about the fans' treatment of Israel Adesanya, and more so how the fans might not be able to see what is potentially to come with the former middleweight champ. Before we begin this video, guys, I would like to ask you a favour. If you could like and leave a comment on this video, we can see if this type of content is something you would maybe like more of, and we can continue making more of these. And hey, if you like the video enough, feel free to subscribe too. Adesanya. This is something I've noticed more and more with Adesanya's rise as middleweight legend. Of course, I am talking about the Gyno Boob. People noticed this immediately when Izzy successfully beat the then berserking top contender, Paulo Costa. Adesanya's right pec was noticeably larger than normal. And drooping, with Izzy stating the following: "My pituitary gland was checked, hormone levels are fine, estrogen and testosterone. Yesterday we had an ultrasound and a mammogram. I had one for the first time. To be honest, it might have just been unhealthy living a little bit, like smoking weed. That's what the doctors from the UFC said. He said I need to stop, but I'm not stopping. I'm just going to slow down on the smoking weed." This raised a lot of eyebrows, and when people looked into other causes, the first that came up was that normally this is caused by consuming anabolic steroids and PEDs. Naturally, there was an outrage, with many criticizing the fighter and accusing him of juicing. While that opinion is easy to understand, I do feel it is harsh. The main reason why is more so due to the famous Nate Diaz quote, "Everybody's on steroids." Yes, this is an absolute straw man argument, I concede. But going off human nature, the only way we do the right thing is normally by making the mistake of doing the wrong thing first. Look at UFC only over a decade ago. Fighters were allowed to take TRT, otherwise known as testosterone replacement therapy, without repercussion. But we quickly saw fighters who used this had an unfair advantage over those who didn't. TRT Vitor versus Bisping or Rockhold comes to mind. Once this was realised, Dana brought in USADA, and use of the hormone therapy has been banned. Realistically, athletes at the top will do whatever it takes to stay at the top, and will try products recommended by other people in the industry while playing along the rules. There is a chance Adesanya could have taken something, but we would also have to bear in mind it could be something that hasn't been deemed as unfair now, but could be in 10 to 15 years. Myself personally, I would rather give the benefit of the doubt to a fighter until proven otherwise. And with Adesanya, I feel that one of his biggest traits as a person is his upfront and blunt honesty. Adesanya has no problem speaking his mind and discussing genuine issues openly and honestly, regardless of how he may feel about it. This brings me to my next point. Boring. Many people have started to make remarks about Adesanya's recent title fights, calling him a boring champion who doesn't come to fight. This for me is far-fetched. Understandable to a degree, but still very far-fetched. Yes, Adesanya has had fights as of late where the champion does not take a lot of risk and looks to score points and retain his title easily. However, there are two fighters in each fight, and I believe Adesanya is suffering from what I like to call the Wonder Boy defect, except to a higher level and different attitude. First, however, let me explain what I mean by the Wonder Boy defect. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is one of the most technically gifted strikers to ever enter the octagon, bringing respect back to the martial art of karate, which had become a joke in the martial arts world due to fake karate gurus claiming to be experts and giving people a black belt after 1 month of training. Wonderboy was able to make karate work in the UFC, to such a point he earned 2 back-to-back title fights with then 170-pound champion Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley suffered a similar fate to what Adesanya currently faces, with many calling the champion boring. However, what many people don't realise is with the supreme striking specialist like Wonderboy, the only way to beat that style... However, what many people don't realise is with the supreme striking specialist like Wonderboy, the only way to beat that style isn't the most appealing. With a lot of ground control and minimal risk to not open oneself, the only way to beat that style isn't the most appealing. With a lot of ground control and minimal risk to not open oneself to a sudden KO or TKO. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is one of the most technically gifted strikers to ever enter the octagon, bringing respect back to the martial art of karate, which had become a joke in the martial arts world due to fake karate gurus claiming to be experts and giving people a black belt after 1 month of training. Wonderboy was able to make karate work in the UFC. To such a point, he earned 2 back-to-back title fights with then 170 pounds champion Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley suffered a similar fate to what Adesanya currently faces, with many calling the champion boring. However, what many people don't realise is with the supreme striking specialist like Wonderboy, the only way to beat that style isn't the most appealing. With a lot of ground control and minimal risk to not open oneself to a sudden KO/TKO, which Thompson had proved numerous times he was capable and deadly at every second of the fight. Like I said earlier, Adesanya is suffering the same fate as a champion like Woodley, fighting an unappealing style in order to win his fights. However, where they differ is that Adesanya is the specialist striker, the Wonder Boy, in this situation. So because of this, his challengers often are not able to fight an appealing style as they would risk getting KO'd or TKO'd. And with a kickboxing specialist like Adesanya, that could come at any moment in the fight, and that could be their only ever opportunity at a title fight. Adesanya is also predominantly a counter striker at heart, but as a champion is too smart to look for a finish as he knows he is more susceptible to losing the belt. The most famous incident of this was the UL fight, which was hyped up to be one of the biggest and craziest fights in a very long time. Yoel ended up doing very little in that fight against Adesanya, and only actually pushed the champ to a somewhat uncomfortable position in the last round, but by then it was too late. Naturally, fans took a disliking to this fight, but because there is a lot of love to Romero, the blame got passed to Adesanya for some reason. This claim for being boring is unfair, as it is due to Adesanya's success as a clinical striker. The challengers have found it hard to put Adesanya into an uncomfortable situation without the risk of getting finished, which we saw in the fight straight after Yoel, where Izzy finished Costa in the second round.